Which other department is left out? Which other department is clean? It appears no one is clean. Now, when you look at an institution such as NHIF, this is an institution that touches the core, the lives of Kenyans, women, children, youth, men, everybody.
It's basically health in Kenya.
It's basically health in Kenya. And health is one thing that if someone really tampers with, then it means it becomes a matter of life and death to the person who's sick in hospital, waiting for, you know, the health insurance to bail him or bail her out. Now, health care universally is also one of the big four agenda of President Uhuru. And if we are seeing someone whom he has entrusted, you know, to hold the reins of this institution, first of all being allegedly, you know, involved in graft and sending such an SMS that do not cooperate with fellow government arms who have come in to check, I am just sad. This must come to an end.
All right, and maybe even looking further at scrutinizing graft in Kenya, it seems like it's something that has almost, it's so ingrained in our DNA to a point where even when the DCI or the DPP are working, one wonders whether if a few people are arrested, whether that really sorts us out.
I think for me, there are a couple of things that must happen. One hit at it is not enough. As you correctly say, it is so ingrained deeply, you know, rightly in our DNA. You know, a child is born, and the minute that child becomes interactional, you know, he or she starts, adapting, you know, some weird corruption type of thinking. But for me, I think this is a question that must be taken back to Kenyans. The power is with the people. If Kenyans can decide today, we are saying no to corruption. I am saying no to corruption. You are saying no to corruption. To me, that's the only way we can fix this. Fixing such a problem top down, from the top to the bottom, we are just going to hear or see about a few. But what about that cop who takes a bribe on the road? What about that driver, motorist, who actually gives, you know, the bribe on the road? What about that parent who gives a little few coins to the head teacher or some teacher in school?
Make sure that their child
to make sure that, you see, there's no big corruption, there's no small corruption. Corruption is corruption. And as long as we are entertaining the small ones, there's no way the big one is going to go away. Kenyans are going hungry. First and foremost, why? Due to graft. Kenyans are sick and unable to access health care. Why? Graft. Many women and many girls and boys are left out of the mainstream education, primarily due to what? Graft. Due to graft. So I think for me, I would take this war to myself as a Kenyan. I would take it back to all Kenyans and just challenge us all to occupy our rightful place and say no to graft. If we need to picket, let's picket. If we need to point out to each other, point out to your friends, to your relatives, you know, to your workmates, to your business partners, everybody who is looking like they are graftish, you know, we need to just smoke.
To fight it.
We have to just fight it.
All right, and like I said earlier, some time ago, is that we all have to become enforcers.
Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, if we leave it just to the agencies, it seems not to be working, and it still continues. But talking about Kenyans who probably have had enough when it comes to impunity, there's a story on page 3, and many of you would probably have seen the video of a certain tuk-tuk driver who literally took on 2 police officers, traffic police officers, and pelted them with stones, and at some point wanted to run one over. I'm sure you probably have seen that video. So Standard managed to catch up with that particular driver to find out what was going on. But this maybe is an indication of where Kenyans are in terms of having had enough with impunity. Do get yourself a copy of the Standard to get the details of exactly what happened and why he was so irate with police officers. But this is dangerous when we get to a point where people feel that now they have to take on the agencies that are meant to be protecting them because they've had enough.
I think this is one of those stories that reflect the broader feeling of Kenyans that enough is enough. And by the way, there's another one also doing its rounds from yesterday into today of a guy who's literally beating up, like locked in a...
Right, fighting with a police officer, and it's a police officer who has an AK-47.
Exactly.
Yes,
so,
it shows you how dangerous
so that can get ugly, you know, and many other people can get hurt. Now, if you see a tuk-tuk man, driver, taking on this kind of path. Really, the guy reached his boiling point. His end. He said, come what may. But let's square this out. But this just shows a couple of things. First and foremost, we appreciate the role that traffic police officers do on the road. It's their job, they have to do it to keep us safe, and mainstreaming the traffic story. But that's just one side of it. The other side is, how do you handle these motorists? Even if you find a motorist has done something wrong, all right? How do you handle them? The story, according to this guy, sounded as if he was roughed up. The police officer, came and plucked, the insurance thing and smashed his windscreen. And probably, not even probably, I can bet my life that this tuk-tuk business is all he has to feed his family, to function, as a human being, to do his duties as a man. And if someone comes in and just tampers with it without explanation, a guy can boil. So I'm thinking, law enforcement on the road and everywhere else. Also, the law is clear on how you need to handle someone who you think, has broken the law. But roughing them up, and also these police officers now engaging in stone throwing, you're throwing, he's throwing. I mean, who should have shown leadership here? Exactly.
But I guess that just shows the state of people's frustration.
Exactly.
And hopefully we do not have to now take the law into our hands. But obviously he was very, very annoyed. Find out what exactly happened in the Standard. On to page 5 of the Standard this morning. Why state wants 3 denied bail. The Chinese nationals accused of bribing investigators to influence a probe ticketing scam. A scandal with the SGR. This again was broken over the weekend, and it was to do with approximately 1 million shillings that may be lost in a ticketing scam. But again, to find that the Chinese were at the heart of this, and that of course leaves us wondering what else might we be losing, given again that we have a very huge debt that we are paying to the Chinese for the SGR.
Actually, this story to me reflects just a tip of the iceberg at just how exposed we are as Kenyans to manipulation, how exposed we are to outsiders. That a foreigner can come into our country and do this kind of thing, get involved in graft and even try to bribe your way out, to me is just even unthinkable. How can our democracy, allow that? SGR in itself, a great project, but it has been marred with controversy upon controversy to this date. And we still have this huge debt, as a country, to pay for it. So this is one of those projects that every Kenyan would have expected a smooth sailing system, a smooth everything. So the fact that even Chinese are the ones doing ticketing, to me, I have always felt that does not even smell right. So I think the decision to arrest them, put them, keep them in custody and deny them bail until this matter is resolved in the judicial process, to me, I think that's the right direction, and it sends a very strong message, to every other foreigner who may be working, in Kenya doing whatever, but just be aware that Kenya has laws. You come in, do whatever it is that you need to do, stick to the deal. But do not get involved, in graft and make worse, the lives of Kenyans.
Absolutely. And the story is there. But also, we do know that the Blue Economy Conference was opening yesterday on page 6. We have that story of over 100 states in Marine Economy Pledge, and that's according to Huru. Later on, we're also going to be speaking to the governor of Nyandarua, that is His Excellency Francis Kimemia. That's around 7:30, and we're going to be looking at his thoughts on the blue economy and also Nyandarua's role in the blue economy. Believe it or not, Nyandarua can actually participate in the blue economy debate, but that's what we're going to be discussing right here. But let's skip that and go to page 10, where we have NTSA's new order on digital speed gadgets. Now, the NTSA is proposing to have new digital gadgets which are going to be able to be fitted on all PSV vehicles and will relay information to NTSA directly, whether they are overspeeding, where they are, And this, I guess, would be a step in the right direction because, again, the same cops that we have seen being harassed by the tuk-tuk driver are the people who are supposed to enforce the speeds that are supposed to be kept. So I guess this would be good in terms of using technology to our betterment.
Well, time has come for us as a people to figure out ways in which we can embrace technology to increase efficiency in service provision. I remember a few weeks ago, I was in Tanzania, and I was moving from Sirare, the Kenyan border, all the way to Mwanza. And there was this guy who was driving me around, and, you know, there were places where I thought, see, we just speed up, you know, see, we 22, you know, just, you know. I would how I do that. And he explained to me that, where, madam, here, their traffic story has been digitalized, and the traffic officer will just need to flag you if you were overspeeding at a certain place and just give you a ticket. You don't even need to pay there. You know you have a bill to pay. And that traffic officer, the system knows who's where at what time. All right? So if that revenue does not end up reflecting back in their treasury, the officer you are in trouble.
Wow.
So they have found themselves in a place where the traffic officer cannot ask for a bribe, all right? Because even that fine that you're paying, you're not paying to him or to her. You're paying to some system on the spot, and you're issued with a receipt right there. If you don't pay, that's fine, you go. But the police officer will have to then
say what happened
here and what happened to, And I'm thinking that NTSA has occupied, their rightful place in trying to think through with us as Kenyans, ways in which, our roads can continue to be safe for all motorists and even pedestrians across the road. And I'm thinking that the kinds of changes that they are trying to bring in, some might not be palatable to us, but change, people resist change. But ultimately, it is change for your good, it is change for my good, to ensure that when I'm on that road, I get to my destination, the right place. As we are heading towards, the end of the year, Christmas season, New Year, we know historically as Kenyans that this is the season that we normally see like very, very grisly, bad, accidents, and we've had quite a number in the last few months, and that to me continues to be unacceptable. We need to ask ourselves, and I think that is what NTSA is trying to do. What is it that we can do better as an institution? What is your role yourself as a pedestrian? What is your role, as a motorist moving from place A to B? What is the condition, of your vehicle? And especially the public service vehicles. For me, I applaud this.
You applaud that. Technology is definitely something that should be used more often to ensure that we manage our roads, and especially as we get into the festive season. I'm sure we cannot say it enough, but let us drive carefully and ensure that we get to our stations alive. Drive alive, I think, is what the campaign is normally called. All right, let's now move on to the Nation, where the headline on the Nation is again to do with an NHIF, and the Nation has captioned it, NHIF New Sick Man of Kenya, and that's Geoffrey Mwangi, the CEO, the little-known man at the helm of an institution alleged to have reduced prey for graft predators. But there you go, that's a story that we've already talked about. But an interesting article also on page 3 is to do with how much you're paying in terms of traffic for the superhighway. And that's taxpayers fork out 1.5 million a day to maintain Thika superhighway. And it costs taxpayers that much, and 1.5 million every single day to maintain the Thika superhighway, making it the most expensive road to maintain in the country under the new performance-based road maintenance program. And that, I'm sure, would come as a surprise to many. But again, it is a very busy road, given that it's literally the artery from Central Province, from whether you're coming from, just Garden Estate, from Maruroi, all those areas, literally Thika Road has become a very busy road.
Yes, it has, but it's actually a shocker for me to just learn today that this is the amount of money we spend, a day to maintain the highway. I'm not an engineer, and many people are not. For us, when the road is done, you drive on it, you go wherever you're going, you come back, and you don't think that this is a road. This is a thing, that needs to be continuously maintained. And for me, I just want to say that this reflects the broader challenge of traffic management in Nairobi, all right? And right now, even as we're speaking here, go to Thika Road, coming into town. It's, you know, it's like bumper to bumper. And the question is, how then were we surviving, you know, without this Thika Road in the first place? Is it that we've just gotten more cars? Is it, you know, like what? But I'm thinking that maintenance of a road and just ensuring that the road is used, you know, the right way should not only be a headache, you know, of the government, but even of the motorists and everyone who uses the road. Let's use it in a way that we appreciate that you'll need to use it again tomorrow. Let's not, you know, litter with stuff, and let's just, you know, obey all those
traffic laws that are in place.
Traffic laws. But the 1.5 million a day, I think, also comes back to the burden that Kenyans have in terms of taxation, all right? I think Kenya is one of those countries that is, you know, like heavily, you know, taxes its people. And I think I would want to engage, you know, in further conversations in ways in which how can the tax burden on the people, you know, be reduced. If we seal all those loopholes, you know, through which our monies get siphoned out into individual persons, you know, pockets, then I think we can have some hope in reducing the tax burden of people. If the Auditor General and people concerned can seal the 600 billion that we lose every year due to graft, then I think Kenyans deserve a relief insofar as their tax burden is concerned. But we understand our roles and duties as a people to pay tax.
All right, and on page 5, we see the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga taking up his job, and he is working, and this is his new job, working with the AU. He was in Zimbabwe, and calling upon African leaders to change. And some of the things he says is that African leaders have to take transformative decisions and be innovative in the way they approach persistent problems, which, of course, is a call to all African leaders to be innovative. We seem to have a problem, especially of recycling. The same leaders, and it's not just, you know, at the presidential level.
Exactly.
If you even look at some of the state appointments that we have, some of the ministerial jobs that we have, that's a general problem that we have in Africa of recycling. And it's normally dependent on who knows who.
Exactly. And I think God needs to help us, you know, in Africa to turn away from that. But I think the sentiments of Right Honorable Raila is timely. You know, this is the time that I think every African leader, not only at the presidential level, but at all levels, the minute you're calling yourself a leader in an African context, you need to ask yourself a couple of tough questions. And they also need to talk to each other and point out things, you know, to each other, insofar as figuring out ways in which their leadership approaches, you know, and attributes can be pro-innovation, can be pro-young people, can be pro, you know, transformation. And I think time has come that the people, regardless of which country you are in, the people need to realize just how powerful they are. For me, I don't think the people need to put up, you know, with crappy leaders for 5 years or 4 years or 8 years, depending on your
But one might argue and say that it's the people that put them there by virtue of the fact that they vote for them.
That's debatable, Michael.
And that, of course, puts into question now the question of democracy, because we'd like to think that we're a democratic country, and it is the people that go to vote, and that's why ultimately the Constitution says that the power is in the people. But then, of course, we know that sometimes those systems are jeopardized by how they are run, especially at the political party level. And, well, that's a debate for another day. And, well, as we finish, let us look at page 14, which is the cartoon on the nation, and maybe just your comments as to whether this is true. We have Parliament basically has been turned into a choir, and the conductor is one gentleman or lady, I'm not sure if it's male or female, but known as Greed. Do you agree with this cartoon? You know, cartoons are interesting in that they get a very powerful message across with a touch of humor.
Actually, this is a powerful, you know, message. You can interpret this in a variety of ways. And this reflects the perception of the common mwananchi insofar as how they view their parliament, whether how they view the parliament nationally and also at the county level. But my take on this is that, for me, I would rather single out individuals and just not, take a blanket, condemnation of the entire house. Of course, there are individuals who are compromised, who their initial and priority is greed, but not all of them. I know very many great, parliamentarians at both houses and even at various county levels who are just putting their hearts, and energy out there to make things work, for Wanjiku. But this is a raw statement that our leadership also need to hear, that this is how you are perceived. All right? So what can you do about this perception to continue to communicate to the people exactly what you're doing, exactly your output, year 1, year 2, into your, occupying that seat? And I think as collectively, Parliament, I think, needs to speak to itself and address this perception, not for the sake of just addressing it, but for fixing things that actually needs to be fixed. But I wouldn't employ a blanket condemnation on the entire.
We still do have honest people and people who are there to do the right thing. But again, they say perception is reality. So if this is the perception that people have, according to them, that is their reality.
Their reality.
Absolutely. It's now 4 minutes to 7 o'clock. We want to wind up this segment of the show, of the newspaper review. But do get yourself a copy of the Standard and see what's making headlines. There are many other stories in